up, let me get my mind right. Yeah, let me get my mind right. You know everything is alright. You know everything. All right, we in Unit 2, and it is our logic unit. And no, we're not talking about Logic the Rapper. We are actually talking about different statements that you make in logic. You all are the king and queens of logical statements, especially conditional statements, which we're going to talk about today. You all, this is more of a verbal unit, which means we're going to do a lot more words than we are going to do math. But so it's going to give you a little change of pace, all right? It's not going to be a lot of algebra in this unit. Today we're just going to learn how to write converse, inverse, contrapositive, and biconditional statements. And then you're going to learn how to translate them from verbal to symbolic statements. Now, on the top of your paper, you just need to go ahead and write CIC statements and symbols. If you wrote something else, it's okay. If you wrote conditional statements, it's fine as well. Okay? Now remember, you are going to want to write all your stuff here. Okay? And then if you have a question, you put it out here. Okay? Does not matter. All right? Now, let's go ahead. What is a conditional statement? A conditional statement is an if-then statement. And you all use if-then statements all the time. For example, when you're at home, you're like, Mom, if I do this in school, then can I get these new pair of shoes? Or Mom, if I wash the dishes, can I go out and play? Then can I go out and play? Or Miss Nash, if I do this, then you should let me listen to my music. And no, that's not happening. So you all know what an if-then statement is. Here is an example of a conditional statement. If I watch the videos, then Miss Nash will not fuss at me. There are two parts to this statement. The first part is after the if. I watch the videos. That is called your hypothesis. Oops. All right. And then the second part comes after the then. And that is called your conclusion. All right? Your hypothesis has to happen before the conclusion to happen. So for instance, you're not going to get those new pair of shoes if you don't do what you're supposed to do in school. So the hypothesis has to come true first in order for the conclusion to also come true. All right? So sometimes they do not write statements in if-then and ask you to convert them into a conditional statement. All puppies are dogs. How would I write that as a conditional statement? Well, what you would do is I always put the then wherever the verb is in the sentence. So if you notice, the verb is right here. Let me change my color. So this would be where the then goes. So the if or your hypothesis would be all puppies. And your conclusion would be dogs. So the way that I would write this is if it is a puppy, then it is a dog. Oops. The end. If it is a puppy, then it is a dog. So let's try another one. Again, wherever the verb is where the then is. So this is all going to be your hypothesis. And then this, after the then, is going to be your conclusion. So if I was to write this, it would be, if it is a glass object, then it is fragile. Now, I'm not worried about if the verbiage makes sense. As long as you have the main part, the hypothesis, where the hypothesis is supposed to be, and the conclusion, where the conclusion needs to be. All right. It did not change over, I noticed. Hold on one second, guys. Let me see if I can change it for you. Okay. So, let me... Oh, come on, baby. I'm going to move this one for you. Here we go. Sorry about that, y'all. I didn't even notice that. So again, here is the then. So I'm going to rewrite it. If it is a glass object, then it is fragile. Sorry about that, guys. I didn't realize it was going on the same page. Okay? Now, a conditional statement can be written in three other ways. They are called the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. Okay? Now, in a normal conditional statement, the hypothesis is usually represented by a P. And the conclusion is usually represented, sorry y'all, by a Q. Okay? So when it says converse, it means that the conclusion is going to be the hypothesis, and the hypothesis is going to be the conclusion. If you notice, I colored two letters, C and O, in a different color because I use that to remind me what to do. So when I think of the converse of the statement, I am thinking about changing the order. So it's going to be Q, then P, changing order. Now, if I'm talking about inverse, do you notice I use IN? And that helps me remember what inverse means. Inverse means to insert knots. So we're going to do the opposite of what it says. So instead of PQ, it's going to be not P, and that squiggly represents not Q. And then contrapositive has three letters. It should have three letters that represent it because it's such a big word. So I'm going to color this in red as well, which means change order, because C means change, O means order, and you're going to put your knots in. So this is going to be change order and put knots in. So not Q, then not P. Okay? So let's try an example. If you live in Virginia, then you live in USA. Is that a true or false statement? Ah, it's a true statement. Okay? So what would the converse mean? Remember, converse means change. I'm going to change my color while I'm talking about change. Order. So let's find our hypothesis. This is our hypothesis, P. And this would be our conclusion, Q. So if I was to change the order, I would write it as if you live in USA, oh, excuse me, come on back, then you live in, oh, come on, hold on one second, I'm going to get rid of that box. You live in Virginia. Now, is that a true statement? Is it every time you live in the USA, you always live in Virginia? And that answer is false. Now, whenever you say something's false, then you have to give a counterexample. Why is that false? Well, because you could live in DC, Maryland, New York. Not everybody that lives in the USA lives in Virginia. Now, let's take that same statement. You do not have to write the statement over. Just write the word inverse, okay? So, remember, inverse means insert knots. So, again, I have my P and I have my Q. Remember, I am inserting knots. So my statement is going to say the following. If you, do not, come on, live in Virginia, whoops, then you do not live in the USA. Okay? Now, is that a true statement? The answer is false because if you do not live in Virginia, you could still live in the USA. You could live, the counterexample, and I'm going to put CE for counterexample, is you could live in Maryland, DC, New Jersey, California, all these places. Okay? Now, the next one would be contrapositive. And remember, contrapositive, I remember to put that N in there, is change order knots. So, I'm going to change the order, still have my hypothesis and my conclusion, and put the knots in. So it's going to look like this. If you do not live in the USA, then you do not live in Virginia. Now, this is a true statement. There is no way that you can live in Virginia without living in the USA. So this is a true statement. Now, when the conditional, the original, and the converse, remember converse means to change order, are true, it is called a biconditional statement. And instead of writing both statements twice, we can write an if-then statement. So, for the statement that we already created, an if-then statement would be this. If it was true, you live in Virginia if and only if you live in the USA. Now, the symbols for a biconditional would be this: P and an arrow on both sides, Q. Okay? Now let's talk about symbols. These words that you see on here have certain symbols for them, and we're going to put them on there. For an if-then statement, if you notice, it's just an arrow, okay? For a biconditional if and only if, because it has two ifs, there's an arrow on both sides. We already talked about not. It's a squiggly. Therefore is 3 dots. An and symbol looks like an A. It's like a caret, almost like you've seen on your calculator. And an or looks like a V. Okay? Now, you all were given these sheets, so all you have to do is put them in your notebook and fill in the information with me. I'm giving you the verbal statement. All we're going to do is we're going to write them in symbolic form, okay? If you notice, the first one is if then. So you have a arrow. Whoops. Okay? But then we have to represent what is it rain? If you look up here, is it rain is a P. So this is going to be P arrow Q. Because Q represents the ball game is postponed, if you look at the top. Look at number 2. It says the ball game is postponed if and only if. IFF is if and only if. It rains on Friday. The ball game is postponed is represented by a Q. Then we have if and only if, P for Friday. Now look at number 3. It says if the football game is not postponed, then it rains on Friday. So the football game postponed is Q, but it said not postponed. So I have to put a squiggly Q, arrow, P, because it's an if then. Next one says, it does not rain on Friday and the football game is not postponed. We have to use that and symbol. So it does not rain on Friday is squiggly P. And will be the caret. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. It does not rain on Friday is squiggly Q. And the game, I'm sorry, I was right the first time. Please, I apologize. Let's try that again. It's squiggly P and squiggly Q. All right. Please put a question mark next to that one so I can explain it again in class. And number 5, the football game is postponed or it does not rain on Friday. The football game postponed is represented by AQ, or it does not rain on Friday, squiggly P. Okay? Now, let's go ahead and write what each one of these statements mean. We're going to go the opposite. Q, arrow, squiggly P. Well, Q, the arrow means if then. So we're going to go if Q, cow, make milk. Then the moon is not, oh, I don't know what just happened. Not blue. Okay? Now, the next one has double arrows, so that means if and only if. So that one will be represented by the moon is blue. And we don't have to write if and only if. We can just use the double IFF. Cows make milk. Sorry. The next one has an or statement in it. So we are going to do cows make milk, or, I'm sorry, I read it backwards. It's P arrow Q. So, the moon is blue, or cows make milk. And the last one is an and statement, but it also has a squiggly in it. So, it should look like this. The moon is not blue, and the cows make milk. Okay? Now, that is all we have today. You do not have any notes to do. You don't have, not any notes. You don't have 4 problems to turn in. You just need to be prepared to do more problems and to practice more of this when we get into class. Have a great day.